Welcome back to the Impact Driven Leader. Man, Chris, thank you so much for joining me. As you guys have seen, the title for today's episode is, with Chris Norton, 7 yards, but you're so much more than 7 yards, dude. You're like 7 million yards. So I want to say that first and foremost. It's been such a great joy of my last year, really. If I'm thinking here, we're coming to the end of the year, and I think about the people that I've got to meet and interact with, and I think about you, it's like, man, I'm so thankful and appreciate you spending some time with me today to have a conversation and add value to people in the world.
Absolutely. Tyler, I really appreciate being here and being able to get to know you, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, so for those that maybe are listening in that they don't, who the heck is Chris Norton? This smiling, bright, young, just energetic face. Tell people in your quick words who Chris Norton is and what you're here to kind of, I guess, serve people in the world by doing.
Yeah, I guess where maybe people have heard of the name or maybe it's the story, but, playing college football, being a tackle, a split-second decision, I broke my neck and suffered a severe spinal cord injury, losing everything from my neck down. But I did not let that stop me. 3% chance to ever move or feel again. Kept going, kept praying, kept believing, had a good team around me, and was able to defy those odds and live life in a meaningful way, I feel. But I feel like, I don't know, that's just who I am. Now I'm on a mission to inspire others, use my story and what I've gone through to help somebody else in their own struggle and their challenges. Because adversity is universal. It all stirs up the same emotions and the feelings of confusion, anger, frustration, anxiety, and how you can overcome those things is then also universal.
As we've talked before, as I know from my experiences with, some other friends that I have that are as well, paralyzed, that have had spinal cord injuries, there was a lot of moments where you're just laying in a bed and you're like, dude, what's going to happen here? Mm-hmm. What was the moment, if you could think back and just in this story, like, okay, I can't let those thoughts overwhelm me. I need to take control of it. It's really this avenue. When did you decide to, lead yourself?
Well, I think I felt like I grew up with that kind of mentality, or at least it was helped instilled in me. So I'll take you back to when I was about 11 years old. I'm on my way home from a basketball tournament. I'm fighting back tears in my eyes because I felt like I missed every shot, turned the ball over, hurting my team more than I was helping them. And then to make matters worse, I have to ride home with my coach, who's also my dad. And so I'm trying to keep my head down, not to look at the angry glares from the rearview mirror. And so I finally get home, kick the shoes off, and I go straight to the couch. I try to distract myself with TV and video games, just anything to keep my mind off what was really bothering me. As I'm sitting there, I'm also just complaining and blaming that I wish I was taller. I'm not as tall as everybody else. I wish I was faster, had my own personal gym, then I would be a good basketball player. Well, a couple hours of this goes by, and finally my dad, he comes, sits next to me on the couch, talk about the weekend, and he tells me something that I'll never forget. He just says, Chris, if you don't like where you're at, then do something about it. And I don't know what it was. Those words just clicked. It's simple as it is. If you don't like where you're at, then do something about it. And so I just got to thinking, why feel sorry for myself when I'm not willing to do anything to change? Blaming my circumstances was certainly not helping me. And if you want to get better results, then you have to get better. And so I got up off that couch. I went outside and I shot baskets until it was dark. And I started to make a habit of turning my attention away from what I can't control and the things I have no influence over, like genetics and circumstances, and pour that energy back into what can I do about it? What can I influence? What do I have control over? And that really helped me to overcome minor struggles that would come up as I continue to get older. Well, fast forward then to my spinal cord injury. And like you said, lying in the hospital bed wondering, what is my future going to turn into? Like, will I ever be a dad and have a family, go back to school? Will a girl ever want to be with me? Will I always be like this. And those emotions are tough, and you'll never get rid of all your negative thoughts and feelings, but you can change your response to them. And what I've made a habit leading up to that is responding to those emotions and feelings by turning towards what I can do about it. And so that's really what helped me get through the toughest moments of my life, was trying to turn away from those feelings. I'm not saying don't feel. You should absolutely feel. If you need to cry, you cry, right? But it's filtering out the emotions that aren't serving you, that are unhelpful, they're not helping you solve the problem, and using that fuel to go towards what you can control. And that's what I made an effort every single day, was just to focus on what I could do.
There's a lot of things you shared there, which are pretty amazing to me. You're a person of faith, I'm a person of faith, and I believe that, certain things are intertwined. And one of the things that you talked about there is this idea of adversity and not being numb. And, as I've learned and I've read this last week is, you can be resilient or you can be numb. You can't be both. And, part of what I heard there, and as I know that this adversity you went through built your resilience because you chose not to be numb. You could have just numbed out. You could have just laid there. You could have just said, this is my lot in life. But you chose to push into that adversity, build resilience, because you chose not to be numb. And I think from a leadership perspective, as a self-leadership or you're leading others, like you see something difficult coming, push into it as opposed to just thinking, oh, if I don't do anything, it'll go away. Mm-hmm. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I definitely lean into those emotions because that's kind of the springboard to the next thing. I can actually remember just a couple years ago on the beach with my family. We're celebrating Thanksgiving. As we're recording this, is coming up. But I remember seeing my kids were playing catch the football with their uncles. I remember just sitting there thinking, man, I wish I could do that. Like I just kind of got spiraling out of control of like all the things I wish I could be doing with them on this beach, and I couldn't. And that frustrated me a lot. And I remember fighting back tears. But what it turned to is like, okay, what can I do? Like, what kind of dad can I be? Where are the areas that we could have an adventure or do something exciting together? And so that then led to, one of our next vacations where we went to, Colorado together, and we did some adaptive things there. And then eventually I went and did adaptive skiing. But I remember that pain moment, and instead of like bearing it down, it springboarded me to get creative of what are the areas that I could do with them to be interactive with them. It's not playing catch the football like I want to, but there are other things that I can do.
Yeah, I've seen, as you share that, I've seen videos of you and your kids, and you got, dragging them around in your chair and like having so much fun and piling on and writing. And it is such that it's like, instead of worrying about what we can't be what we can. Because when we fully become what we can, dude, that's what shines a light in the world, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's a promise I made to myself early on, was to not allow what I can't do to paralyze me more from what I can.
Yeah.
And so that's just something that I hold near and dear to my heart. And I'm always trying to focus on those things because it's really easy to get weighed down by what you can and what you wish you could change. And that can overwhelm anyone in any circumstance, not just my own. But I've been able to find that strength and that fortitude to turn my attention away from that.
So one of the things, and it's cool because you learn a lot about Chris by watching the documentary 7 Yards. I referred to that earlier. But one of the great things from a leadership perspective that tremendously impacted me is your, kind of post-injury, as you're back in school and you're living in this house with all these guys, and like there's a certain amount of like leadership through that capacity, because you convince these 19, 20-year-old guys to essentially serve you. Not in a way of like, oh, here was our King Chris, we're going to serve him, but really as a friend, as a teammate, as a, we're in this together. You want to walk us through kind of that circumstance, and one, looking back, how impactful that was on you, but also how it's been impactful on them. Because to me, it's really an amazing testament of leadership.
Yeah, I would say that my buddies, there was plenty of them that just rose to the occasion, that wanted to be there for me. And what I really appreciated them was their presence. I think that's one of the things that we miss a lot when someone's going through something hard or life-changing. Well, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. Like how can I help them? Like, what do I know? I've never been through something like that. Well, you don't have to have experience or have gone through something like that. What people need is a friend. They need someone's presence to know that they're not alone and that you got their back. And that's really the most important gift that you can give to someone who's going through something hard is, I didn't need any wise words from my buddies. I just wanted to be around them. I wanted to be one of the guys. That was really important to me, and that's how they treated me, and that's how they included me in everything that we possibly could. We made a lot of things that were not accessible just through, muscle and grit and figuring out a way. But I did learn a lot from that too was, these guys, they'd come to my aid, and especially right at first, like they're bending over backwards, helping me any way I can, like filling up my water bottle. Maybe it's helping me get up in the morning and get clothes and shoes and my toothbrush, whatever it may be. But there was a time though, I had a tough transition I had to ask for so much as a quadriplegic. There's only so much I could do, that I did start to take it for granted, that it was just matter of fact because, well, I can't do it. So obviously I need help. So I just ask. And I could tell there was, especially with some of them, you could see it was wearing on them, that it was kind of almost King Chris asking to get what he needed. I wasn't asking in a mean way, but it was just constantly acting almost like expectant of it. And I really started to notice that, like a little bit of a change. And I started to reflect on, what am I doing? And I realized, I wasn't thanking them and appreciating and acknowledging them enough. And I got to cut that out. Like that, no one wants to feel like they're taken for granted. And that was a huge shift in my mindset. And from then on out, I'm always, please, thank you, acknowledging them. And it's amazing how much more willing and helpful people become when they feel seen and appreciated. And so that was one of the kind of a leadership trait that I really picked up on is, they knew I needed help and vice versa. I'm not getting in bed on my own, but you can still acknowledge them and thank them and let them know like how much that does mean to you. And then something that I've, as time gone on, so I've always felt like, man, guys, I owe you guys so much. You guys have done so much for me. I don't know how I'm ever going to repay you. And I'm like, well, you've actually done a lot for us, Chris, because here we are, teenage guys and trying to figure out our way in life and who are we? Well, it gave them a lot of meaning and purpose to know that they're helping me. And so in a way, I was giving them something just by having them help me and be there for me. So that gave them a lot of meaning and purpose in their life and just something that you can feel proud of.
You started off that piece, one of the things we talked about is your injury and what do you do? And it's just to be seen. And I can remember from my own, tragedy and the thing that impacted me the most was the people that reached out to me and just say, hey, we see you. And it was, 3 months, 6 months down the road. And to me, then you end it in saying the greatest thing you could do to acknowledge them was to say, I see you. Mm-hmm. And that's such a human need on both sides. Is leaders need that. People need that, whether we're going through adverse situations, and yet those that we serve need that too, because they're in essence like, hey, do you see me? And it's such this, to me, I love how you maybe intended, not intended, but that bookend of it's about seeing people and just saying, hey, I see you. I see you. I thank you. I appreciate you, what you're doing, and how impactful that is for everyone, no matter what side of the equation you're on, right?
Yeah, you want to know that what you do, who you are, matters. And to give that to other people, to make sure that you are seeing them and you're seeing the best of them is really important. Because oftentimes, too, as a parent, I catch myself, it's really easy to point out the things that they're doing wrong, that they're messing up on. I'm like, yeah, I see you, but I'm seeing you messing up. And I have to remind myself you can't be like that. You can't just tell them all nitpicking all the little things that they're doing wrong, because there's so much they're doing right. And they're incredible kids, and they need to know that. And to make sure as a parent, I got to remind myself to not lose sight of that, to make sure I'm balancing way more appreciation, acknowledgement for the good things, way more than I am doing, the things that you need to improve on.
So I would not be a conversation with Chris without one to recognize your wife, who is an amazing piece of the story and who you are, as I've recognized, as we've talked about. But I also want to, let's talk a little bit about your kids. So how many kids do you have?
6. 6
kids. Okay. And how many of those are adopted?
6.
Yes.
6.
And to me, that's an amazing testament to you and your wife. Here, let's just, like, those listening. All right. Chris, you're, in your early 30s now, right?
29.
29. Okay. Sorry. I'm aging you, dude. I apologize for that.
Don't do
29.
That. I'm not 30 yet.
Yeah, no, dude. Come on. No reason to be there. But 29, 6 kids, you're, quadriplegic. You're like, but it doesn't matter, because you can serve. And one of the things that you just said there that I believe, as a father of 3, I have learned more about being a leader from my kids than I probably have all the other books, everything else that I've been through. Simply what you just said is like how you recognize them, how you guide them, how you, really maximize what they can do is working on your own leadership. And so to me, I would love for you to continue through that a little bit more, the impact they've had on your life, but also vice versa.
Oh yeah. And too, like, definitely learned a lot. I learned really young with my injury and directing people and making sure I got exactly what, I need, because how I do things is going to be different from 99% of the population. But yeah, my kids, they've taught me a lot of just, the power of your words and how you phrase things and the way you communicate and direct, and again, making sure that they're seen and that you build their confidence and help them. One of the funny things that we found that works really well to kind of what I call is settle the glitter. And I've seen this with adults too. We all have it, but I think of our brains as a snow globe. Okay. And when an obstacle or challenge happens, you get shooken up. It's cloudy. You can't see through it. Well, you're not going to make good decisions or rational thought when your brain is all clouded. In fact, science shows when you're going through anxiety or an obstacle happens, you start to go back to your back of your brain versus your front, where your critical thinking is. Well, that part's all clouded. And so when you're trying to direct somebody or tell somebody when they're emotional, they're not really registering it because it's all cloudy. You kind of help them settle their glitter and make sure there's clarity, there's more rational thought. And so something that we'll do with like some of our younger ones is we're like, hey, 1 + 1 is 3, right? And they're upset, they're crying, they're frustrated about whatever it is, and it stops them. No, it's 2. 1 + 1 is 2. I'm like, what? I'm like, okay, what's 2 + 2? It's 5, right? They're like, no, it's 4. Before you know, they're completely done. But it's just kind of an interesting tidbit that we've picked on of just how no one makes good decisions when you're upset, and the importance of making sure you manage your emotions, or when you know somebody else that you're leading or directing, the emotion of tension is high, you got to bring the tension down, and just getting your mind distracted or doing something else can really settle that. Breathing is another important way to settle it, counting down. But I feel like that's something I've definitely picked up as a leader.
Man, I love that, the analogy, the imagery of settling the snow globe, settling the glitter, because I think that can be real easy and become like a common language. It's like, all right, let's just settle the glitter. Yeah. Let's just take a timeout. But it's not saying, oh, you need a timeout or you need to count backwards. It can almost be a trigger for some. But then it's like, oh, let's just settle the snow. Let's let the glitter settle.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that imagery, again, from a leadership perspective. That happens to all of us. I mean, the other day we're coming home from my son's football game, and he was got upset with me, and just like, dude, why are you upset with me? And that was an instance where I needed to just settle the snow globe. Mm-hmm. I needed to let the glitter settle and just say, you know what? We're going to drive the rest of the way home. Yeah. You guys won. You're good. You're still a little amped up. You want to go out and hit somebody still, but just relax. We'll deal with it later, after dinner, whatever else. It doesn't need to be dealt with now, because we did start to get a little tense in those emotions. So I relate to that completely.
Yeah, I do it to myself all the time. Like, all right, I need to just relax, because when you have like multiple things going on, you kind of get overwhelmed. It's like, okay, I need to just settle glitter, bring it back down, and not react, in anger or frustration, because, we just don't make good decisions when we're that emotional or that upset.
Chris, when we've talked before, we've talked about this idea of you being resilient, pushing through adversity, really driving yourself to say, I'm going to get out of my chair. I'm going to walk. I'm going to will it to happen. If you're, in front of a room, like you do so much speaking, and you're there, what are you hoping to impress from your experience there upon everyone else and living, in the room who's not in a chair, who is sitting in a physical chair, able-bodied, they're able to do things. People maybe don't see their limitations. How can you help them, or what do you try to do to help people recognize their own limitations and push through that?
Yeah, I think with my speaking and my story and me being on stage and what I share, I think it really gives people perspective on their challenges, on what they want to achieve, and really what's the most important thing in life. Like, it's not about the money, the fame, the achieving this or that, but it's really, how do you live a life of significance and meaning? Like, how do you add value to people? So I think a number of things that it does, but I think the biggest thing is just shift a perspective of, your problems are as big as you think they are, right? They're as big as you think they are. And, it's easy to feel like your problems are so big. And I think when I get up there and I share my story, what I've overcome, what I've been able to achieve, it makes them think about their problems to be a lot smaller and to be manageable. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that gives them the confidence and the courage of like, okay, I can overcome this. And now I know how Chris did it. And now I know how I can do it as well. And so I feel like that's one of the biggest things that I give people is hope. And I believe hope is one of the most powerful things you can ever have. Even false hope is better than no hope.
What do you... when we talk about that, we talk about, the friends that are around you. We talk a little bit about, I mentioned your wife and how impactful she was, mm-hmm. and kind of really, I don't want to say enabling, but being just accountable and also there with you through the entire process. When we think about that from a leadership perspective, and just as friends saying, how can we help champion people around us without even knowing exactly what challenges they're going through? If I, zoom out and say, okay, if I'm one of your, teammates, if I'm one of your guys, and I can see Chris is trying to, one, get strong enough to be able to actually move, control his body, where it first started there, but then go beyond that walk. Now we're sitting here and you're looking at me or I'm looking at you saying, all right, Chris, how can I champion what you're doing next? What are some things that you learned through that process that you could share with others as far as how to start unlocking that for other people?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest things that would help somebody to become more resilient is what I call to take on radical responsibility. And that means for all outcomes of your life, not just a little bit of responsibility, but complete responsibility over the good and the bad outcomes, the failure, the successes, the healthy and unhealthy relationships. But when you can take on this responsibility, and the more responsibility you take on, the better you'll respond to adversity. And one of the quickest ways you can become more adept at being responsible for your life is to practice cutting out blame, the need to complain, and all excuses, because these behaviors, they keep you emotionally stuck. They prevent you from doing all that you can do because, let's face it, life and people are unfair and unjust. You can't control the weather, your genetics, circumstances, but you can control the manner in which you respond. Like, challenges can't stop you from acting with kindness, control, dedication, humility, and honesty. It will never stop you from doing that. And so when you can take on this responsibility for every aspect of your life, it empowers you to go. It empowers you to know that you're in the driver's seat and you can make it happen.
When, you talk about that, to me, that goes back to that story you shared as an 11-year-old, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, what do you want to be? Like, what do you want to do? Like, it's up to you. Whatever you do is what's going to result in. It kind of comes back to this, as you're saying. It's like, all right, how you deal with it, how you can, choose what to control. There's, I mentioned this earlier, a few things that I've been learning and reading this last week. It's like, you can control things, you can't control people. And yet so often we can try to control the other people in our life that we're not taking control of the things that we can control. Mm-hmm. I can control picking up that ball and going out and shooting it. Mm-hmm. I can control, how much I'm going to work from my mindset to say I'm strong enough to do this and not tell the stories that we tell. And so much of that is a difficult process because I think human nature is, we want it to be easier, right? It should just be easier.
Oh, absolutely. I think we all want a shortcut, right? And we all want to either live in the future or in the past. But really the most important thing is this moment right now. Like, this is where we are. This is who we are. It's right here in this moment. And what you decide to do next is what's going to create your future. And so just really taking that control, that focus, understanding that your future will take care of itself when you take care of today. And I kept reminding myself that when I was in the hospital because I would get so overwhelmed thinking about my future, of what movement I'll get back. How will I ever manage life in a wheelchair? How will I go to a friend's house when everyone in my friend's house has stairs? How will I ever do fun things like traveling and camping and snorkeling and skiing, like all the things I love to do? How will I ever do them? And it was so overwhelming. And then I would sometimes think about the past of what I could do, what I wanted to do, all the dreams and goals I had that maybe I won't be able to do them. What if I would have done this differently in my past? And all of that is to say, I had to come back to this moment, like right here, right now, and focus on my choices and my decisions that I can make and that I can influence. And because this decision right now is going to create your future. Every decision you make right now is what really matters the most. And so trying to stay grounded in this present moment and not look into the future too far or look in the past, but really do what you can right here, right now.
I had this idea that I share a thought of the day. And to me, one of them that I just shared recently hit me just now is focus on what you are rather than trying to develop what you aren't. Mm-hmm. Right. It's kind of, instead of thinking, well, I can't do this or that, it's like, no, I can do this. I can ride, I can ski down a mountain, right? There's tools that you can do that. There's, ways that you can go do a lot of things that I know you've shared that you've done. And again, comes back to that. It's like not making up a story for our situation, not making up a story for others and what we can or can't do from a leadership perspective, and just being comfortable and, all right, this is what I can do. So I'm going to go do that and figure out other things that I can do that maybe are unseen, rather than focusing on all the things that I can't do and trying to, wish it wasn't the case.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, it comes back to managing those emotions. Those are strong emotions that you kind of got to filter out and to settle the glitter. And then you start figuring out, okay, what can I do? What are the ways that I can objectively take action on that will change my situation, or at least make it better, or make it head in the right direction, even if you don't really know where you're going. And then also trying to then figure out the why, the purpose that will kind of keep you fueled and energized and to keep you going and moving forward.
So you've had in your life, whether it's graduation, your wedding, kind of this imagery of 7 yards, 20 feet, that you're going to walk. What's the next challenge right in front of you that, is kind of next? Because I want to know about that from Chris. What are you working through right now that myself and hopefully listeners too can be a champion of and say, hey, we're on your team, dude, let's go. I'd love to know what that is.
I'm trying to figure out, I love the motivation. I'm always trying to figure out how can I best serve people? Like, how can I better serve? What can I abstract from my experiences that can make someone's life easier? And so really right now, my biggest thing, I'm always kind of going to the drawing board of figuring out like how can I best communicate what I've gone through and how can that best relate to somebody who's going up against maybe a bad relationship or the business is struggling and just struggling with anxiety, depression. Like how can I serve them and what can I extract from my own experiences? So I guess really my biggest thing is always trying to kind of come up with something new, come up with something that I can communicate and serve others. And then also I'm always trying to grow my foundation, the Chris Norton Foundation. We have a wheelchair camp for kids, and that's a really fun event too. Zip lining, horseback riding, laser tag. It's literally the best week of the year. So continuing to grow that, but those are kind of a couple things.
All right, well, hold on. You got to tell me more about that. I want to know more about the camp. I want to know more about the foundation.
Yeah, so I started the Chris Norton Foundation when I was in college because it became painfully apparent that my situation was the exception and not the rule. Like there are thousands of people who are in wheelchairs who are dealing with some sort of disability who don't have the support system or the resources to be successful. And I had the resources because I was injured in an NCAA sporting event. And because I was injured during one of their events, they have an insurance policy that kicks in that covers all of my medical and rehab expenses. So I don't have to pay for physical and occupational therapy. I don't have to pay for caregivers out of my pocket. Well, everybody else who ever goes through something that I've gone through, they have to come up with that money on their own. And it's expensive. Equipment is expensive. Like my vehicle that I drive, it's this sweet truck, like that costs more than probably some people's houses. But I didn't have to pay for it. And so my point and like my inspiration with the foundation was how can we make people's lives easier? How can we make sure that they can have a success story like I have, where they're recovering or at least are living a healthy life? And then we grew that further by starting a wheelchair camp for kids. So it's an inclusive camp. Kids of all abilities come, plus their families. And it's free through donors and sponsors. And we literally just have an incredible week of camp. It's an empowering week where everyone just feels like, wow, I can do so much more. I can play sports. I can make friends and zip line and horseback ride, like the activities I mentioned. And it's really a fun week where you see so many smiles. I had a dad tell me after this last camp, I've never seen my son so happy in my life. And so it's really neat to hear that. And then to also know the families are making memories together. It's not just the child who might be in a wheelchair or dealing with disability, but it's the siblings, it's the parents, everyone making family members memories together.
Dude, I love it. I love it. How many kids come?
So we have accessible rooms for 24 kids.
Okay.
So those get filled up. And of course, everybody wants to come back the next year. So it's kind of a hard situation we get put in because we want everybody to come back. We also want new kids to come in too. But that's what I'm hoping. Maybe we find another facility or something down the road where we can do another camp, have 2 camps.
I think you need to have like 100 camps, dude.
Right?
Like Chris, the camper. Let's go. Let's make it happen, dude. I had the ability to serve for type 1 diabetic camp, and again, as someone who's generally able-bodied, it's hard to recognize the challenges that people have every day if we're blind to it. And I'm thinking, again, from being involved in this type 1 diabetic camp, it's just, oh, you're different. I imagine that same situation in a wheelchair. It's like, oh, you're different. Well, how is that? Were you born that way? Did something happen? All those stories that happened that I knew, happened with kids type 1 diabetic, they get to that camp and they see people around them and they're like, oh, I'm all of a sudden now I'm normal.
Yeah.
Now checking my blood sugar is normal. I need, insulin. It's normal. I'm in a wheelchair. I have to, charge it. You motor, all those things that are normal now. Oh, I need to be able to have accessibility here, there is normal. I understand how freeing that can be for kids. And so my desire is like, dude, we need a lot more of that. And the thing that I think is so important there, and I've seen and appreciate, is it's not only, the kids that are in a wheelchair. It's their siblings. It's their parents. It's everyone else in their community that is just as affected. So I love that. And I think there's a tremendous need for it in our entire society.
Oh, yeah. That's one of the biggest things that people feel like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one in a wheelchair. Like, there are other people just like me. They have to go through the same things as I do. And then, in fact, everyone then becomes a resource for each other. Oh, you should try this. This is how we do it. Maybe you can try it the same way. Or, oh, you should talk to this rehab medical director or this equipment facility that can really help you. So it's a great way to pass information back and forth. But then really it's just empowering. It just makes the kids feel, wow, I'm not the only one out there.
So I'm going to put this out here because I want to execute it and I want it to happen. So previous guest, Joe Delagrave, I think you hopefully know who Joe is. He was the captain of the U.S. Paralympic wheelchair rugby team. So I'm putting it out right now because I want to find a way to get some of the Olympians at your camp.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
I want to make that happen.
That'd be great. We'd love that.
I would love that. One, from an inspiration point of view, but it comes back to where we started this and kind of this idea of one of the biggest ways that you can, serve people, help people, acknowledge people is see them. And one of the biggest ways to, at the same point, is be seen. And, dude, that gets me excited.
Oh, it's awesome. It's a better week than I have more fun and excitement that week than Christmas. It's a great week.
Dude, I love it. Well, you need to have at least probably 50 of them. You don't want to do 52 because 52 would be a little exhausting. But I think all right, well, maybe not 50. Let's start with 20. All right.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. All right. Work your way up. Well, Chris, before we kind of finish up this conversation, I want to ask you: is there anything else that you really want to share from your heart for the rest of this audience, from a self-leadership, from a personal leadership, from things that you've really learned and gained that you want to make sure someone listening in that is in a leadership position really gains? And I just want to give you that opportunity.
Yeah, I would say this, that if I could go back and change the play, I really wouldn't. I mean that. And here's the thing I want everyone to get is that adversity and failure is a part of life. And if you try holding on to it, it's going to rob you of your future because things will never be perfect. But just because you aren't getting the results you want or living the life you dreamed of doesn't mean you stop trying, or that's not a life worth living for. And it was through the loss of my physical strength that revealed to me what's most important, like family, friends, and serving others. I discovered I don't need to walk in order to live a good life, but that doesn't mean I don't feel frustrated at times, right? We all have our frustration. There's things and moments that I wish I could do, but again, I go back to that promise I made to myself. I refuse to allow what I can't do to paralyze me more from what I can. And so I hope just everyone listening here right now, no matter what struggle or obstacle you're going through, you can get through it. There is a way, and I just hope that people find the courage and the boldness to continue to take action, to keep chipping away, and know that you take care of today, and your future will take care of itself.
Dude, I can relate. It's like I just have to get over losing my hair. It's okay, dude. I don't care. I'm bald. I'm cool with it. It's easier. It's part of life. It's how God made me. It's all good, right?
Absolutely.
Not quite the same, but I look at that. It's like, hey, I got to accept myself, and it is what it is. Like, I don't want to deal with hair. Absolutely. You can have that, man. You can have that.
Absolutely.
All right, dude. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing. We will make sure in the show notes we can find out more about you. Make sure people find out about your foundation, all your speaking events. 7 yards, all those good things. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Tyler. Appreciate it.